Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Thursday, and all of our guests today are brought to you by the Vancouver Giants. And again, Manny Viveros, head coach of the Giants, is going to join us in a matter of, a couple of segments. Saturday night, the Giants take on Kamloops, 7 p.m. puck drop, Langley Event Center. Don't forget the Giants' annual Teddy Bear Toss game happening December 9th at the LEC. What a visual that is.
That's going to be good.
Tickets are selling fast. Get yours now at vancouvergiants.com/tickets. Joined now by NHL Analyst, co-host of the Bob McCowan podcast, John Shannon. Thanks for doing this, John. How are you?
I'm great, boys. How are you?
Good. Ottawa, John. Pierre Dorion out as GM of the Senators. A 73-page document. I mean, are we being told everything about this story? Because I'm looking at 73 pages, and I'm thinking there must be layers to this, maybe beyond the Dadonov trade.
Well, I don't know if it's above and beyond the Dadonov trade, but I think it probably speaks to the process of what happens when a trade is made.
Yes.
So above and beyond the original discussion between originally Ottawa and Vegas on Dadonov, Central Registry out of Montreal is involved to supervise the trade call. What was said on that trade call, obviously there are differing opinions of what was said on the trade call. As Michael said yesterday, it was a he said, she said scenario. And then when you involve a third team in the Anaheim Ducks, part of the league's job is to try to adjudicate and create fairness between the franchises. And if you have been judged to lie between franchises, I mean, I'm not sure there's anything worse that an organization can do when you're trying to create a level playing field. And obviously and I haven't read the report. I don't think anybody outside of the Senators, the Golden Knights, the Ducks, and the NHL will ever read the report. But obviously something was in that report that suggested that there was a lack of information shared between the Senators, between Central Registry, and between the Golden Knights originally, and then the Golden Knights to the Ducks.
What was Pierre Dorion's reputation before this story broke, John?
Well, he was put in a really untenable situation when you consider working for Eugene Melnyk was never the easiest thing. And then his reputation, it was as a really good judge of talent and was a great scout, put in a really tough spot. And look at the young core of players that they now have in Ottawa that could potentially turn things around. What his relationship was with the other 31 general managers, I really can't speak to. But his player evaluation was at or near the top of anybody who came out of the scouting world.
Steve Staios, Peter Chiarelli, Matthew Darch, who takes over in Ottawa?
Yeah, you see, I'm one of those guys. I've known Steve Staios a long time. Yeah. I don't know why Steve Staios isn't going to become the general manager full time. Steve, I heard Ryan talk about he's like Stan Smeel. That's just not true. Steve Staios ran on every level Michael Andlauer's OHL team in Hamilton and took them to the Memorial Cup tournament. He was involved in Edmonton and player personnel. Steve Staios is a really good hockey man. It would not surprise me that they help Steve with hiring a few quality hockey operations people around him, but it would not surprise me to see Steve Staios keep the job and become the general manager himself, like a lot of managers and presidents of hockey operations do, like Kyle Dubas has in Pittsburgh.
John, positive vibes out here on the West Coast. Canucks are 6-2-1. What's impressed you the most about this Canucks start?
Goal differential.
Yep.
I think that they're still scoring, but they're keeping the puck out of the net. And I think that people that looked at the Ronick trade last year and said, "Oh, we gave up what for what?" I mean, Ronek's looking pretty good, isn't he? He's looking pretty good. I think Susie and Cole have been good additions in the short term. And then, you put on top of that the accountability that Rick Tocchet has created. I mean, winning over Nashville 5-2, God, I thought we'd get at least a smile out of Rick after the game. But I'm not sure we got a smile out of Rick after the game. And, Elias Pettersson had a hat trick. I'm not sure he even got a game puck after the game.
Exactly. You know who's not smiling right now is fans of the Calgary Flames. Oh, boy, 6 straight losses, 2-7-1, all contracts on hold. They got a ton of UFAs. Now, if this continues, John, they got to unload some pretty big-name UFAs. It is going to be one interesting year off the ice if the losing continues in Calgary, John.
You're right. And you have to think that this isn't, Craig Conroy making this decision. To me, contracts off the table, and I truly believe they were close to getting Noah Hannafin done.
Yep.
This is coming from ownership who have seen what they've seen and are a little more impatient than most ownership groups have been in the last little while. It puts Craig in a really tough spot. It put Ryan Huska in a really tough spot. They can turn it around. They played better, for instance, last night against Dallas, even though they didn't win. Dallas is a better team. But I think this is now a measure of what will happen in the next 25 games. I think we're going to see in the next 25 what happens to the Flames, and then we'll probably take another analysis of saying, okay, are we going to be a big seller at the deadline? Who's available? Who wants somebody like Elias Lindholm? Would they find a way to find somebody to buy Jonathan Huberdeau or Nazem Kadri? I don't know if that discussion has happened yet, but you'd have to think 25 games from now, if this team continues to flounder, that those discussions have to happen.
The Adam Johnson tragedy, John. Manny Viveros of the Vancouver Giants is going to join us in a couple of segments. The WHL is making net guards mandatory. Is it just a matter of time before the NHL does the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, so let's be candid here. The WHL is joining both the Ontario League and the Quebec League, who have already had this rule in place.
Right.
So junior hockey now is in lockstep when it comes to net guards. I mean, as people in the league office have said, that they are pushing for players to wear net guards, but this is on the players. I don't know if you guys remember, gosh, I think it's about 7 or 8 years ago, Jay Feaster was still the manager in Calgary, and he wanted everybody to wear ankle guards after a couple of his guys broke their ankles blocking shots. So he went and bought ankle guards for everybody, threw them in the middle of the floor and said, boys, put them on. And they didn't have to under the collective bargaining agreement, and not many did. This is, because it's an equipment issue, it is collectively bargained. And so the three of us can push it. Gary and Bill can push it as much as they want. But in the end, it's up to the players. And I do think the shock waves that occurred in England over the weekend have rippled through the players and the Players Association. But in the end, I believe it will end up still being a personal choice of every individual athlete.
But, John, that leads to the obvious question here. You're talking about ankle guards. It's one thing breaking your ankle. It's another thing having your throat slashed and possibly dying. How can the players not accept wearing neck guards?
I am with you, Donnie. I am with you 100%. I agree with you. But, there has been a stigma about neck guards. If it was easy to wear a neck guard, people would have always worn neck guards. But there's been a stigma about wearing neck guards, whether it's macho or not.
Yep.
And then, do you sweat too much when you wear the neck guard? How many, So there are enough built-in excuses, rightly or wrongly, that contradict player safety. But this is one of those ones where lots of people point fingers at the NHL office and say, well, the NHL should do this, the NHL should do that. This is not an NHL issue. This is a players issue. The players need to get on board with neck guards. Then it will be easier to legislate. And that, to me, is where the big thing is. This might be Marty Walsh's biggest challenge in his short term as executive director, Because remember, Marty works for the players. The players don't work for Marty. And so if enough players push back, Marty's put in a very untenable situation.
Yeah. We went through the same thing with visors, John.
And
this to me is as if not a whole lot more serious.
It is. No, you know what it is. You're right. Yep. I mean, there's no way around it. The problem, the other problem has become, and it's unfortunate. I love this game so much. I really do. I love it's put a lot of money in my pocket and food on my table. But too many times our sport is reactive, not proactive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is another scenario where reactive is the issue, and too many people in the sport don't like to be reactive. And it's difficult in that scenario to force change because they say, no, I'm not changing for the sake of change. And being reactive sometimes is the wrong thing. We should have been proactive a long time ago.
Well said. John, thanks for this. We'll talk to you next week.
Cheers, boys.